Hello, this is Distracted Lord, and welcome back to Wreckfest, and I am here in the tuning menu, and this is the menu I don't often show in videos, but it is a very useful and important part of the game, and it consists of you tuning your suspension, your gear ratios, your diff, and your brake balance, or brake bias, or whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to be talking about how all the stuff works and what you can do with it. So we're actually going to start at the bottom, which is perhaps not what you were expecting, but I'd rather start at the bottom. So I'm starting at the bottom, but this is your brake balance. It depends. It controls whether your car is rear biased or front biased, and what that means is, if you have it front biased, then you'll lock up your front brakes much easier and will therefore understeer. If you have it rear biased, you'll have it so your rear wheels lock up and then you oversteer. So it's not but do you want to understeer or oversteer? And I had it here to start with, because sort of in Wreckfest, the best way to turn is often to go a bit sideways, because well, it's mostly dirt and that's sort of how you tend to turn on dirt. But I leave it in the middle here, so I can, if I whack it all the way up to the front, and we then have a nice go in this nice sunset that's going on. So if we go along here, and then I brake, I can't turn. See, you can't see that I'm turning full dog. Right, so if I'm going along, let's just do this for demonstration purposes. So you see I'm doing this, and then I'm turning full lock here. My front wheels just can't turn because they get they get locked, and then they don't turn very easily. So it basically means you have to be very careful about locking up your brakes. If I then go back to the tuning menu and I set it to rear, and we go, then when I come up to the corner, I will brake, my front will turn in and my back will come sliding out. And in this vehicle it's not too bad. In some vehicles that will cause you to just go spinning and do big wheelie. Minor issues with this car, it does that. But so if I'm driving along and I want to turn a corner, I start turning, I brake, and then we have to do some quick counter steering because we're flailing everywhere. So it sends your car into the oversteer, which in this game is kind of important, but I don't generally want it on maximum rear bias, because also if your rear wheels are not in contact with the ground, then you pretty much can't brake. And roll it, more rolling, and we're upside down. No, not resume. I didn't mean to press that button. Right, so I tend to leave it here. That way you get to go slightly sideways into the corner without being spun out uncontrollably and without understeering off into a wall. So I think that's a good middle ground for your brakes. We now move on to the gear ratios, because of course I wouldn't do this in sensible order, and this is probably the simplest of them. You want your gear ratios to, on the longest part of the circuit that you're doing, you kind of want to change this stuff around often between your circuits, and you want it to be you want it to be on the longest straight, or the bit that you're going fastest. You don't want to be buzzing the limiter. You want to be in your highest gear but not buzzing your limiter. So yeah, that's fairly simple. If you're doing like a smaller track, then like some sort of like motocross, not a motocross, what's it called, rallycross style track, then you'll probably want shorter gear ratios. If you're doing demo derby, then I just put them really short because you don't tend to go very fast. But if you're doing a longer, faster circuit, you want longer gears. There are some cars that you will never need long gears for because their gears are really long to start with, and there are some cars that you'll need to lengthen their gears out because they're really short. It's a bit weird. Yeah, that's probably the simplest of the four. And now we have the differentials. So if I make my differential open and I start going, if you know what differentials are and how they work, then basically you might know, or if you don't, I'm going to tell you. So if you look, actually that's a very bad demonstration. It's just a bit of tarmac here. Yeah, so basically, if I stop, and I'm turning this way, let's just do some donuts. You see my inside wheel is spinning and my outside wheel is, well, it is spinning because it's a wheel, that's what it does, but it's not like doing wheel spin. And I was going to turn and do the other way, it should do the same thing. Yes, because the differential is open, so one wheel is allowed to spin far faster than the other. And what that means is you will oversteer, not understeer. You just generally oversteer less, because when you're going sideways, only one wheel will most likely have a lot of power going through it. So you see, as I'm just turning around there, the outside wheel just isn't actually being powered, pretty much. And yeah, it doesn't give it any power at all, pretty much. Whereas if I go and lock it, then we have the complete opposite. So no matter what you're doing, there is equal power being given between the two wheels, meaning that when I go around the corner, we do this. That was a perfect demonstration, and yes, that was intentional. It also means you can't straighten up very well. On dirt, it's not as bad, but on tarmac, lock diff just equals you spinning out, or having to do that weird, complicated throttle control that people do when they're trying to drift. I'm not a drifter, so I tend to try and do less drifting, or at least have more control in my drifting. But you see, I put the power down and I'm spinning out because both of my back wheels are spinning, wheel spinning, and therefore neither of them have particularly good grip, and so we spin round. On dirt, slightly counterintuitively, you often want a more locked diff because you have less grip, so you want to make even. Yeah, it's a bit weird, but I think that is how it actually does work, and also how it works in Wreckfest. I like that corner, but let's just go back to the menu. So that's a differential. I prefer to have it here. That, like, if you have like a killer bee, then you want it open because the killer bee is, well, it kills you. There are some cars that, yeah, small light cars with lots of power like the Killer BS, you probably want a more open diff because they are twitchy and it sort of, yeah. But differential, more locked differential will help you turn sharper-ish, but also more likely to spin out, whereas a more open diff will give you more control and consistency through the corners even if you're not turning quite as sharp. So the final and probably most complicated actually is the suspension. And although it sounds quite simple, if you've got bumpy ground you want soft suspension, right? That's not necessarily all there is to it at all. Because if I have soft suspension, like in this car, that is a recipe for falling over. In this car, or I'd say a Vandal, I would not recommend you put it any softer than standard, because that just sort of equals you falling over pretty much. And falling over in the middle of a race isn't the most useful thing ever, so I would recommend you don't do that and you leave it around here. But on a normal car, I guess I can try it. I'll try it, we'll see if this falls over, but we should be able to see the more complicated bit of the suspension, because suspension is not just about rough ground. So you see here, my car is, the body roll is intense, and the car pretty much goes on two wheels, and what that means is that the inside wheel is pretty much not on the ground, and so therefore the diff goes, right, we can spin that wheel a lot, and that means that you don't actually get to put your power down as much through the corner, because one wheel is in the air and spinning and the other one is going, well, all the power's going to the other one, and then your inside wheel is spinning wildly and your outside wheel just doesn't really, because there's no power going to it. But also, as you see, I'm going over these bumps perfectly nicely. So if you're going to a bumpy circuit, as long as it's not got like adverse cambers, then perhaps you want this sort of suspension. But I have also surprisingly not rolled it, which is surprising. Yes, that was amazing English right there. But you can see sort of the diff and your suspension are actually quite closely linked. So if you have really soft suspension, you might want a more locked diff. Because you see here, when I go round when I'm turning, if you look at the inside wheel, it comes off the ground there entirely, and I stop moving pretty much because I'm not putting any power down because everything in this game is 3-wheel drive. But then, if we go through the menus, I go and make this really stiff. Then we have the opposite, as it's probably fairly obvious. And we boot it and off we go. And my weight is shifting around a lot less, and that means that the wheel is not being lifted into the air, it is spinning instead. So we are putting some power on bonk. But you can see we are bouncing, not bouncing, we're sort of hitting harder on the ground. And we bump over that, and if we go up here, we go flying around here. Much tire shrieking, but when we go over this this jump bit here, it goes clunk and sounds rather horrible, and I don't want my car to do that because that sounds like something is going to break. But we're much more stable. But also, there is another aspect to this, which I'm going to restart before the thing goes, is that your weight shifts around, and well, if you've got lots of body roll, then as you go around the corner, sort of your car will sort of shift itself, and your centre of mass will end up being more to the outside. And what that can cause to happen is that can cause you to be spun or rolled or whatever. And if your weight and if you go into a corner suddenly, your weight can suddenly shift to the outside, and that can cause you to spin out, that sort of thing, which isn't very useful. Whereas with this stiff suspension, you don't hit curbs. Curbs are mean. You see one wheel in the air, doesn't spin. But with the stiff suspension, the body hardly is moving, and we're far more stable through the corners. So basically, soft suspension makes you unstable in multiple different ways. And in a car like this, unstable is not good for a car that is generally unstable. Let's just go around the final corner, because I love the final corner. That was not great. You never saw that. But if I go and make it soft, and you watch the body roll, and how it's shifting around. So when we go into the corner, it goes bonk. Yes, there's a wall there. But when we go into the corner, it picks its wheel up, and it sort of pushes the car round the corner more. The centre of mass moves sideways, and so the car, like, I'm not steering here, the car just does that. Which I guess it kind of does normally. It's not an absolutely massive game-changing difference. It's not, your car is not going to just roll by when you touch the steering. It's not that much of a difference, but in a race the tuning can be very important, and so it helps to know what all the things do. And that's sort of it. But I have one more fun thing I want to try and do, so I'm going to put all the settings on the most ridiculous things I can think of, and we're going to see what happens to the car. So here is my wacky setup. So we're completely rear biased, the differential is locked, the gears are really long. I thought about having them really short, but that would be undrivable almost. And long gears is completely unnecessary and in no way going to help me So I've got my nice long gears, my nice soft suspension, my locked diffs, and much rear bias. And let's see how many times we fall over / spin out. Or both. Here's a question that we might solve. Can you spin out and roll at the same time? We spun out, smash into a wall. No damage done. The long gears mean my acceleration is horrible. It doesn't like this. We're spinning out again. Control the vehicle. We're bouncing. Bounding. We spun out again. And what I'm doing here is proving the importance of tuning your car and not just making it wacky. Although, wacky car is fun. Yeah, the thing is, this car doesn't actually roll. It just spins out, and so saves itself from rolling. Sadly. I kind of want to get it to roll now. We're going sideways. Curb. Perfect corner. You've never seen that done better. Have you? That was perfect as well. Couldn't possibly be done better. Yeah, and we weren't... I don't think I even got into third. So I accelerated horribly, and wow, that is a terrible lap time. So basically, the moral here is have good tuning, know what the stuff does, and use it. This, what I'm saying to here, is my sort of general basic setup that if I don't know what the car does, I'll probably set it to this. Because leaving it standard, to be honest, isn't a fantastic idea. It doesn't necessarily mean your car will drive well. And that's why you can tune it, basically. So, I hope this helps. If you don't have Wreckfest, then I don't know why you've watched this video, but, well, thank you for watching anyway. So don't get distracted, go subscribe now, make sure that notification bell is on, and until next time, I'm doing donuts here by the way. This is standstill donuts. I hope you're not dizzy. Goodbye. How can I need to press the button on my keyboard and I can't reach because I'm pressing this thing on the wheel. We're gonna have to stop spinning for a second so I can press the buttons. Or I can press the buttons and then cut the end of the video off and... Okay, this is making me dizzy now. Okay, bye.